from Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ijoma Onyato.
Hello and welcome. President Muhammadu Buhari asked protesting youths to end their demonstrations and embrace peace in his first broadcast to the nation since the crisis started. Group of prominent Nigerians call for urgent independent inquiry into events at the Lekki toll gate, leading to the use of live ammunition on protesters. Normalcy returns to the streets of Abuja as hoodlums continue the looting of malls and other public places in Lagos. And hoodlums continue their attempt to free inmates from correctional centers across the country, leaving tales of destruction. Plus we'll have business, sports, and later on news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, investment and research firm Codros calls for a speedy intervention to curtail the impact of violent end-SARS protests on foreign investors' confidence.
On sports news tonight, the Super Eagles of Niger dropped 3 spots in their latest FIFA World Rankings.
After over 2 weeks of protests across the country, which has almost paralyzed commercial activities in major cities and caused wanton destruction, President Muhammadu Buhari has finally addressed the nation, and his message to the protesting youths was short and direct. It's time to end the protests. Several state governors are also continuing in their efforts to ensure that the protests do not cause more damage in their states. But before the president's message, however, several cases of attacks on police stations, shopping malls, and attempts to free inmates from several correctional centers across the country have been reported. But let's start off with the much-anticipated broadcast of the president. And President Muhammadu Buhari has finally broken his silence on the protests that have engulfed the country for the past 2 weeks. The president in a nationwide broadcast today called on the youths to end their protests, insisting their voice has been heard loud and clear. President Buhari says although the decision to protest is a fundamental human right, such rights should come with a great sense of responsibility.
The choice to demonstrate peacefully is a fundamental right of citizens as enshrined in Section 40 of our Constitution and other enactments. But this right to protest also imposes on the demonstrators the responsibility to respect the rights of other citizens and the necessity to operate within the law. As a democratic government, we listen to and carefully evaluated the 5-point demands of the protesters. And having accepted them, we immediately scrapped SARS and put measures in place to address the other demands of our youth. On approving the termination of SARS, I already made it clear that it was in line with our commitment to the implementation of extensive police reforms. Sadly, the promptness with which we have acted seemed to have been misconstrued as a sign of weakness and twisted by some for their selfish, unpatriotic interests.
The president also expressed sadness over the loss of lives in the crisis. He, however, decried the negative role of the social media in fueling the crisis.
I am indeed deeply pained that innocent lives have been lost. These tragedies are uncalled for and unnecessary. Certainly, there is no way whatsoever to connect these bad acts to legitimate expression of grievance of the youth of our country. The spreading of deliberate falsehood and misinformation through the social media in particular, that this government is oblivious to the pains and plight of the citizens is a ploy to mislead the unwary within and outside Nigeria into unfair judgment and disruptive behavior. On the contrary, both our deeds and words have shown how committed this administration has been to the well-being and welfare of citizens, even with the steadily dwindling revenues and the added responsibilities and restrictions due to the coronavirus pandemic. Government has put in place measures and initiatives principally targeted at youth, women, and the most vulnerable groups in our society.
The president also asked the international community and the country's neighbors to seek clarity before jumping to conclusions.
To our neighbors in particular, and members of the international community, many of whom have expressed concern about the ongoing development in Nigeria, we thank you and urge you all to seek to know all the facts available before taking a position or rushing to judgment and making hasty pronouncements. In the circumstances, I would like to appeal to protesters to note and take advantage of the various well-thought-out initiatives of this administration designed to make their lives better and more meaningful, and resist the temptation of being used by some subversive elements to cause chaos with the aim of truncating our nascent democracy. For you to do otherwise will amount to undermining national security and the law and order situation. Under no circumstances will this be tolerated. I therefore call on our youth to discontinue the street protests and constructively engage government in finding solutions. Your voice has been heard loud and clear, and we are responding.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. Meanwhile, the National Security Advisor Babagana Monguno is calling on the youths to create the necessary atmosphere for dialogue as a way out of the crisis. The NSA, who was speaking at the end of the National Security meeting earlier today, says the government has shown enough commitment to addressing the grievances of the youth and is therefore asking legitimate protesters to come to a meeting point with the government.
I have spoken with my colleagues in security to also understand that these situations also require non-kinetic effort, which we're also working on to appease the people who are aggrieved. And there's no need to take this thing further, but it is extremely important for the youth to understand that if the atmosphere is not conducive for dialogue and for understanding, we can't have any peaceful resolution. The security agencies have been asked to apply as much restraint as possible, but then again, the youth should also understand that sometimes pushing their luck might also result in unwanted issues. So it is very, very important for everyone to take stock of what has already happened and not give a dark impression of this country to the international community.
Former military head of state and chairman, National Peace Committee of Nigeria, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, is also towing the path of peace and is asking both the government and the youth to come to an amicable position on how to end the current crisis in the country. General Abubakar, who was speaking in Minna, the Niger state capital, says both sides have presented their positions and it's now time to sheath their swords and embrace peace.
In the last 2 weeks or so, our youth have embarked on demonstrations, which for the length of time has been generally peaceful, tagged End SARS, by which they have been expressing their grievances against police brutality and are demanding for changes and reforms in the system. In response, the federal government has apologized and has promised to look into the matter and take action. The state governors have not been left out. They have responded promptly by acknowledging the genuine grievances of the youth, and the Inspector General of Police has also been quite decisive. All these steps show that some level of goodwill and the acknowledgement that the grievances of the youth are being taken seriously. However, and notwithstanding these gestures, the demonstrations continued, consequences of which it began to cause serious discomfort to citizens and the country. In the process, it gave opportunities for criminal elements to penetrate an otherwise peaceful movement. The hijacking of the protests by criminals have resulted into violence, destruction of government and private properties, criminal release of prisoners, and the lynching and burning of policemen and some innocent persons. These developments is causing serious concern to all of us, and if care is not taken, it might lead the country to a point of no return. For this reason, I'm appealing and calling for a halt to give peace a chance for dialogue. I'm appealing to our youth who have strongly and clearly made their points to withdraw from the streets and prepare for dialogue. I am equally appealing to Mr. President to continue addressing the grievances expressed by the youth and lay out the program that meets and addresses the objective of the protest.
And another group of Nigerians, which goes by the name Concerned Nigerians, is seeking urgent intervention from the federal government on the current situation, which they describe as an unfolding national crisis. Members of the group include former NBA President Olisa Agbakoba, human rights lawyer Mr. Femi Falana, former INEC Chairman Professor Atahiru Jega, and the co-chair of the National Peace Committee, Bishop Matthew Kuka. In a statement, the group is asking the federal government to institute an urgent independent inquiry of events at the Lekki toll gate, leading to the use of live ammunition on protesters. The statement reads in part, "The response of the government to these protests have largely been slow, unconvincing, and half-hearted. We call on the president to take immediate steps to identify and arrest immediately the persons that gave the instructions for soldiers to shoot at protesting youth at the Lekki toll gate on October the 20th, 2020. The group, which says it is non-partisan, is also asking the protesters to remain law-abiding and patriotic and not to engage in intimidation, harassment, or any form of violence. They also condemn the wanton destruction of property, killings, and maiming of innocent citizens by rioters and hoodlums. In part two, after the break, hoodlums continue their attempt to free inmates from correctional centers across the country, leaving tales of destruction. Plus, we'll be talking to the founder of Social Intervention Advocacy Foundation, Mr. Segun Awosanya. That's all in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari asks protesting youths to end their demonstrations and embrace peace in his first broadcast to the nation since the crisis started. A group of prominent Nigerians calls for an urgent independent inquiry into events at the Lekki toll gate, leading to the use of live ammunition on protesters. Normalcy returns to the streets of Abuja as hoodlums continue the looting of malls and other public places in Lagos. And hoodlums continue their attempts to free inmates from correctional centers across the country, leaving tales of destruction. Security operatives have foiled an attack on Gudu Market, a popular neighborhood market in the nation's capital, Abuja. The suspected hoodlums, armed with machetes, were said to have attempted to invade the market with the intention of wreaking havoc. The traders, on their part, trooped out in large numbers to defend their business interests as they milled around the market, which is the second biggest for spare parts and other car accessories in Abuja.
Tensed atmosphere around the Gudu market as traders abandoned their shops in defense of the market. Armed with sticks and machetes, the traders claim some hoodlums attempted to invade the market with the intention of setting it ablaze.
My men rushed out, so likewise I followed what is happening. They said that some boys came and grouped down the market, that they want to attack our place. I told them, no, we don't want fight in our business premises. But not that we are running from fight, because as far as we are concerned, we have to defend our business.
We saw some people running, some even ran into the market. So we tried to inquire what was happening. They told us that they are fighting at the back of this St. Jude's Plaza. So the chairman then called the security men to lock up the gate. But the traders in the market, they said no, that locking the gate might, risk the life of the traders in the market.
While security operatives patrol the area, an eyewitness narrates the incident that caused the apprehension.
What happened is there are some group of men, some group of thugs that came. We didn't know that these are visible face. Look at this. You can see this injury. These are people when this guy is trying to defend himself. This was the only person that came to defend them, because at the closed gate, this one they threw from the other plaza to this place to defend themselves through in this arena. So they carry machete. They were bruised everybody, because all the stone, all the hawkers, all the people that are saying that are doing transaction here, they ran away. They throw their goods away. They do everything before we could come out. Some group of boys here broke the gates and came out in group, so those people started running away.
The palpable tension that gripped some parts of the Federal Capital Territory since Monday fizzled out today as commercial activities resume in most parts of the city following the intervention of soldiers. With the Gudu traders taking up arms to defend their businesses, a civil society organization appeals to the NSAS protesters to embrace dialogue.
Considering the recent infiltration of our ranks by hoodlums hired by Manheim, killed and destroyed this genuine struggle for the emancipation of Nigerian youths, the blunter shooting and killing perpetrated by the military on the fellow youths at the Lekki Toll Gates Plaza, and the sole aim of saving the lives of the youths everywhere around the country, we hereby call on young Nigerians to heed the advice of dialogue, not because we are afraid of dying for what we believe in, but because we must achieve the aim of this protest.
Although peace appears to have returned to most parts of the nation's capital, the tensed atmosphere appears to have triggered some sensitivities in the system.
And a day after several buildings were set ablaze and property destroyed, the attacks on malls and other private businesses still continue unabated. Our correspondent Dare Ido reports that while relative calm appears to have returned to some parts of the state, the police are on red alert.
This is Boditamo Street, in Surulere, where there is massive.
From Surulere to Lekki, there are video evidence, mostly from social media, showing massive looting and destruction of properties.
This is ShopRite in Surulere. Look at what they turned ShopRite to. Everywhere is boggled.
Malls, banks, and other private businesses are targeted, and the trend has continued unabated. Hoodlums made an unsuccessful attempt to break into the Ikeja City Mall. The police averted the attack and now on standby. But the hoodlums left a huge mark of destruction on anything that has a semblance of government on the roads. Some residents believe there's more the president can do to douse the raging tension spreading across the state.
The first time they started the protest, it was going peacefully. The boys were asking government for some certain things, and I saw no big deal for what they were asking. They want injustice to be stopped. All of a sudden, the federal mighty came with politics. They ejected thugs. They came with their mighty army. They shot people that were doing protests in a peaceful manner. They kicked some people, and that was what that resulted to all this destruction you are saying.
Just because the president is here to say, please give us time. That's what the youth want to hear. They are not violent. It is just hoodlums that took over this protest. You understand? They are not violent. So I expect the youth to carry on with that zealness. If they are giving them numerous time and the date elapses, we will come back in mass, more than this. So for now, I will appeal to all youth all over Nigeria to please calm down, let us calm down and give the government time.
The NSAS peaceful protest started as a movement to end police brutality in Nigeria, with voices heard globally, but the last few days have seen violence spreading in some parts of the country. Dari Idu, Channels Television News.
Following the death of 2 policemen at the hands of hoodlums in Iwo Road, Oyo State, the governor, Seyi Makinde, today embarked on a tour of the flashpoints of the #EndSARS protest in Ibadan, the state capital, where he declared that his government will continue to do what's necessary to secure the lives and property of residents in the state. The governor, who was accompanied by a number of aides, stopped at different spots where he warned those inciting trouble in the name of #EndSARS protests to stop, adding that he does not want any further loss of life. He also promised to engage the Commissioner of Police in the state to work on how the police can take a back seat, pending the time the situation in the country is arrested. Meanwhile, some hoodlums have set fire to the National Correctional Center in Okituka, Ondo State, allowing 58 inmates to escape from the center. The PRO of the Ondo State Command of the NCS, Babatunde Ogundare, who disclosed this to Channels Television, said that some officers of the center were injured during the attack. Also, the police divisional headquarters in the town was set ablaze, and the PRO of the Ondo State Police Command also confirmed this to Channels Television. A former chairman of the Okituka local government area, who preferred to be anonymous, told Channels Television that the secretariat of the local government, with about 5 buildings, have been razed by the hoodlums. What you can see now was the situation in Asaba, the Delta State capital, late yesterday, which further disrupted the peace there as more violence was recorded. As a result, the Delta State Governor, Ifeanyi Okowa, ordered the closure of all private and public schools in the state earlier today. In a statewide broadcast, the governor also imposed a 48-hour curfew in the state from today, as structures are set ablaze by rampaging youths. Meanwhile, the security operatives in the state have foiled a jailbreak at the Correctional Center in Warri. The security operatives had engaged the Hoodlums who tried to attack the prison, foiling the intended attack that would have led to the escape of inmates. In the process, however, one prison warder was killed. The warder was said to have been killed when his rifle was snatched by one of the inmates, who then opened fire, killing him instantly. Now, there's been tension as well in the Ikoyi area of Lagos State inside the Ikoyi Correctional Center. According to eyewitness reports, trouble started following a fire outbreak in one of the blocks. The Assistant Controller General of the Nigerian Correctional Service, however, told Channels Television that the pandemonium broke out following a fire incident at the administrative block in which some of the inmates wanted to take advantage to escape from the center.
All sister agencies are on ground, and we have been able to contain the crisis. No inmate escaped. We can assure you that corrections, we are doing what we are able to do to ensure that we keep the security of the custodial center. And we can assure the public that they are safe, and no inmate, no matter how terrible they are, have been able to escape from the custodial center. We are top of the crisis, and we can assure you that we'll be pleased at all costs. It was the attempt of the inmate to escape. That was why they set the admin block and the record office ablaze, so that there will not be record of any one of them that we can use in tracing them up. Unfortunately, we have backup and data that we can get all these documents from.
And in Edo State, the governor, Godwin Obaseki, has described the demands from the NSAS campaigners as legitimate and necessary for the development of the country. The governor, who was speaking at a town hall with youths and NSAS protesters representatives in the state on some of the issues raised by them, also increased the number of members in the Judicial Panel of Inquiry into circumstances surrounding the hashtag NSAS protests in the state from 12 to 20.
Upper Mission Road, Oigbeni Market, Ikuba Hill, and Agbo Road, all in Benin City, calm days into the 24-hour curfew the government imposed following hoodlums hijacking the peaceful NSAS protest. The burning down of police stations, attack on correctional custodial centers, and release of inmates followed that hijack. The state government, determined to maintain the peace and order in the state in the midst of agitations in the nation, has invited these young men and women from over 30 youth organizations in the state to this town hall within the government house in Benin City, the Edo State capital. A representative of the NSAS protesters lists some points which need to be addressed.
What they're asking for is simple. Ask the police to be civil in their approach. Government must have an open ears towards the cries of the protesters. I noticed that being proactive to this call, the state government have appointed or have inaugurated a judicial panel of inquiries to look into all this. First, I want to commend the government for doing that. We also feel that it will be expanded to cover areas like the Nigerian Bar Associations and other individuals who also have a history of engaging these people and have special record.
There are more suggestions.
The government must not continue to listen to some persons that are interested in their personal gain. The government must open doors to constructive criticism for our state to move forward.
The Edo State Governor, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, accedes immediately to the request on the expansion of the Judicial Inquiry Panel.
It's great what you are doing, then at NSAS, but we now must move to the next point and leave the streets and say, these are the things we need to do. Let's sit across the table and have firm agreements on how to fix this and when to fix it by and who to fix it. And if it doesn't happen, this is what we must do. The panel of inquiry that has been set up is the first step. I've heard you. We need more representation. There are 12 members today. I've just told the SSG they should be increased to 20 to accommodate those groups that are already affected.
He also says the government has clear plans for the youth.
I have made up my mind on how and who we are going to hire for this next term. And I'll let you know here today. I've not discussed it with anybody, but 60% of our appointees must be under the age of 40.
Governor Obaseki also assured the public that crime would be tackled in the state. The curfew in the state is also to be relaxed from Friday and is to run from 4 p.m. to 6 a.m. for an initial 72 hours, after which there would be a review. Jessica Olubuse, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, more on the NSAS protests. We'll be joined by a civil rights activist and the founder of Social Intervention Advisory Foundation, Mr. Segun Awosonya. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. Let's get more insight now into the NSAS protests. Joining me is a civil rights activist and founder of the Social Intervention Advisory Foundation, Mr. Segun Awosonya. Well, I spoke with him earlier this evening, and I started by asking him his reaction to the president's broadcast.
The president's speech was received with mixed reactions. To most of us, we feel that it is a little bit vague and it is not specific enough, especially given that the youth of our nation have just been, who are unarmed protesters, have just been gunned down at the Lekki toll gate. And I believe that should have reflected a little bit of empathy on the part of the Nigerian president and the president of the nation, who is the father of the nation. For most of us, we have not gotten over that incident. And it's something that we probably will not forget, because who will watch unarmed fellow citizens, the future of our tomorrow, singing the national anthem, being shot? It's not something that we'll see and unsee, or we can unsee. So I think that should have reflected a little bit more in that speech. And I also feel that given the situation of the country now, in a situation where people don't feel safe, shops are being looted, stations are being burnt, companies and offices have been touched, and police officers are not even able to go to work freely because they are afraid of being attacked by the mob and all. So with all this going on, we expect there will be some level of stability, on president to this, in order to bring about a path to peace, a path to reconciliation, a path to new beginnings, or something that gives us that makes us feel that we'll go soon. But we really didn't get that from that speech.
You've talked about what we've seen now, the looting, the arson, and the wanton destruction of property of private individuals and public institutions and buildings as well. This has all been a build-up to which you were one of the conveners of the forefront of the NSAS movement and agitation. You pulled out. Why?
We have only one convener for NSAS Reform Police NG as an advocacy. It is not a protest group. So what happened was that a few young people came together to add their voice to the hashtag, and they decided to run it their way. And all efforts to put them to direct their engagement of the campaign proved abortive. And even though it is that they were supported because it is their right to protest according to as constitutionally guaranteed, but at the same time, the way the whole thing went down, it wasn't really according to what was expected, from the advocacy that was built on building bridges over institutional gaps while deploying innovative interventions towards engaging leaders and the people in a constructive manner.
The dimension that this agitation has taken is not your way. This was not the plan.
Exactly. It wasn't our way. We don't do protest, but we support the right of citizens to peacefully protest out there. But again, from different quarters, you realize that peaceful protest is both a paradox in our country and also an oxymoron, because you can only vouch for what what you will do as a peaceful citizen, but you can vouch for what others will do with your declaration of protest.
All right, civil rights leader and social justice advocate Segun Awosanya, thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts with us on the News at 10 tonight.
Thank you very much.
The closure of the Federal High Court in Abuja has put a setback on the trial of alleged Taraba kingpin Bala Hamisu, popularly called Wadume. Wadume, who is standing trial on 12 counts of terrorism, kidnapping, murder and illegal arms running before Justice Binta Nyako, could not go this Thursday. Outside the court, lawyers who had businesses at the court milled around thinking of their next line of action. This move, some legal practitioners say, may be connected to the ongoing NSAS protests around the country and vandalism around the courts. The Nigerian aviation handling company NACO has come out to clarify the reasons behind the controversy around its relationship with the former managing director and chief executive officer of NACO Free Zone, Mr. Bala Yusuf. The management of NACO says Mr. Yusuf's allegation of criminal conspiracy against the company is prompted by an attempt to force the NFZ to pay him a severance package.
I crave the indulgence of Mr. Chairman and stakeholders here present to allow me to show a 5-minute video of evidence of smuggling activities taking place in NACO Free Trade Zone.
Mr. Baba Yusuf before the House Committee on Public Petitions with video evidence alleging NACO officials are involved in illegal importation and housing of drugs.
You can see, let me show you.
That prompted this press conference by the management of a Nigerian aviation handling company.
These are unfounded, spurious and weighty allegations intended to smear the corporate image of NACO and create a run on the company, more particularly its relationship with international airlines operating within the Nigerian airspace. We would like to state that Mr. Baba Yusuf was never the managing director, chief executive officer of NACO.
The conference also offers an opportunity for NACO to explain what might have prompted Baba Yusuf's action.
He attempted and failed to force NACO Free Trade Zone to pay him an undeserved severance package of 125 million naira, 900,000.
He gave us a document that states his achievements based on his own evaluation, which cannot be quantified. But coming by the company's process and what the company's pay structure and his contract of employment, he's not entitled to 125 million from the company.
This is the issue that is in court.
NACO's solicitor also explains why the company was not represented at a public hearing to counter Baba Yusuf's claims.
Both parties, by law, are not expected to take prejudicial steps, are not expected to take or embark on self-help voyage or exercise. So to that extent, we can't speak any longer on this issue. But regrettably, and that is unfortunate, it appears that the National Assembly is forging ahead, despite the fact that it has joined issues with us in court. Baba Yusuf has joined issues with us in court. Now, by and large, what this goes to show is that this is a brazen disregard for the sanctity of the court.
While assuring its clients that the safety of their business and reputation is of utmost importance to them, the Nigerian Aviation Handling Company says it is willing to cooperate with any agency to resolve this matter.
Let's take a look at some business news now, and here's Anne Wilder.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Joma. Hello and welcome to Business News. We begin tonight with investment and research firm Correctional Asset Management, saying it has called on the state and federal government to take immediate and right decisions that will reduce the impact of ongoing violent protests against police brutality on foreign investors' confidence in Nigeria. In an interview with Channels Television today, the acting managing director of the company, Mr. Bola Hoaino, says part of the measures, which includes bridging the inequality gap between the rich and the poor, will also go a long way in addressing some of the challenges facing the country. The Center for Petroleum Information marks its 20th anniversary with a book launch in Lagos, Nigeria. The book, tagged Energy Inside Nigeria, looks at the challenges within the energy sector. According to the management, the book also highlights the way forward for the industry.
Known as 118 online.
20 years of giving value and knowledge in the oil and gas industry. The Center for Petroleum Information marks its anniversary with the launch of a book.
CPI was registered on 12 December year 2000.
The book opens up issues and challenges within the industry, as it also provides a plan for the future of the Nigerian energy sector.
There is no better way to celebrate these years of action-filled activities than by writing our anniversary book, Energy Inside Nigeria, which we are presenting formally at this occasion.
No doubt, a broad variety of readers at home and abroad will find the book extremely useful in unraveling the numerous issues confronting our energy industry, be it oil, gas, or power.
That future includes salvaging the unrealized Vision 2020, which, according to the keynote speaker, means doing away with policies that are unfavorable to foreign investors.
The way forward is collaboration. The way forward for me is alignment. I think there needs to be strategic engagement with the private sector. I use private sector now to mean all private capital, be it foreign capital or local capital.
The book, Energy Inside Nigeria, is edited by Victor Eramosele, is a retrospect of 2 decades in the industry.
In 7 sections, and here we do have 30 chapters and 16 commentaries, which are basically abstracts of various things people have said. We now have a book that in 440 pages comprehensively documents the energy industry in Nigeria. It looks at 20 years back and looks at 20 years ahead.
The chapters that were contributed covered a very broad spectrum. Some talked about the transparency initiative in the oil and gas industry through the ET, and then others talked about the upstream, and then some mention of the downstream as well, fuel subsidy, low carbon, and the refinery in the age of electric cars. All these were topics that were covered.
The Center for Petroleum Information is an educational hydrocarbon-specific non-profit organization established to pool experts' knowledge and share value-adding information for the benefits of its members and the industry.
After posting its biggest decline in 10 days, Nigeria's stock market has made a quick rebound at the close of business today, a day after posting 0.7% drop, with about 60 billion naira recovered from Wednesday's sell-off. But let's hear more from Chimeze Obiwagu.
Thank you and welcome to the Stock Market Report. In what may be described as a surprise move, the market is back in the green despite the tension and uncertainty in the country, particularly in Lagos State, the commercial capital of Nigeria. But here is what has happened. There was a bit of correction yesterday, so we have some investors taking advantage of the lower entry price. Also, equities still offer a better return on a dividend yield perspective compared to the unattractive fixed income yield. So institutional and retail investors are still showing interest. And so for today, the index rose 0.40% thanks to MTN Nigeria, Stanbic IBTC and Lafarge WAPCO. Volume and value were quite impressive. About 5 billion naira was realized for the sale of 311 million shares in 3,375 deals. However, it's still not looking all good for the sectoral indices, except the industrial sector. All the others were in the red. Social unrest, no doubt, creates fear and uncertainty on the minds of investors who are concerned about safeguarding their assets from any possible fallout of the unknown. And so the sustainability of this gain is in question, except urgent action is taken to arrest the situation. And that was the stock market report. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.
Thank you, Chimeze. But let's head to the U.S. stock markets, which traded higher today, and let's see how all of them closed at the close of business. And that's Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. The rest of the news at 10 continues with Ijoma.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Anne. A few hours to the last U.S. presidential debate between President Donald Trump and his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, and the U.S. president and his predecessor, Barack Obama, have expressed harsh words. The former president ridiculed his successor's achievements, while President Trump mocked his predecessor for being wrong about the outcome of the 2016 election. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. US President Donald Trump and his predecessor Barack Obama have directed attacks at each other during rival rallies.
I've sat in the
Campaigning for Democratic White House nominee Joe Biden in Pennsylvania, Obama likened Trump to a crazy uncle and said he emboldened racists.
President Obama's.
Meanwhile, in North Carolina, the Republican president mocked Obama for being wrong about the 2016 election outcome. Biden currently holds a solid lead ahead of the 3rd of November election.
I get that this president wants full credit for the economy he inherited and zero blame for the pandemic that he ignored. But you know what? The job doesn't work that way. Tweeting at the television doesn't fix things.
President Obama's campaigning for Sleepy Joe Biden. And I said, that's good news or bad news? Tell me, are you saying it's good or it's bad? Well, I guess it's bad. No, it's good. There was nobody that campaigned harder for crooked Hillary Clinton than Obama, right? He was all over the place. He said he will not be our president. But before that, he said he will not run. He didn't know me. Then I ran. Then he said he will not get the nomination. Then I got the nomination.
Meanwhile, US national security officials have said that Iran is responsible for sending threatening emails to Democratic voters ahead of next month's presidential election.
That some voter registration information.
The emails have appeared to come from a far-right pro-Trump group and were meant to incite unrest. That's according to National Intelligence Director John Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe also said US officials found Iran and Russia had obtained some voter registration information. Both Iran and Russia have denied the accusations of electoral interference. Thailand has revoked an emergency decree it imposed a week ago as it tries to end months of protests against the Prime Minister and the monarchy. The measures, which banned gatherings of more than 4 people and imposed a curfew, prompted even larger rallies. On Wednesday, protesters gave Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-o-cha 3 days to step down or face more demonstrations. In response, Prayuth has signalled he would lift the decree, but asked protesters to reciprocate by toning down what he called their hateful and divisive talk. South Korean authorities have sought to reassure people as the number who have died after being vaccinated against seasonal influenza has risen to 13. The doctor leading an inquiry into the deaths has said he does not believe the vaccine and fatalities are connected, but trust in the vaccine program has been dented, and the Korean Medical Association has called for it to be halted until its safety is assured. So far, around 13 million people in South Korea have received the flu jab. At least 10 people have died in post-election violence in Guinea. That's according to the country's security minister. President Alpha Condé is currently leading according to results from the 14 constituencies announced by the Electoral Commission so far. His challenger, Selou Dalien Diallo, claimed victory and has said the election was marred by anomalies. He accused President Condé's administration of modifying results in the incumbent's favour. President Condé has called for calm as the country awaits the official electoral results. Lebanon's President Michel Aoun has designated Sunni Muslim politician Saad al-Hariri as prime minister to form a new government to tackle the worst crisis since the country's 1975 to 1990 civil war. Hariri has won the backing of a majority of parliamentarians. In consultations with Aoun, he faces major challenges to navigate Lebanon's power-sharing politics and agree to a cabinet which must then address a mounting list of challenges, including a banking crisis, a currency crash, rising poverty and crippling state debts. And finally, Daddy Yankee and Bad Bunny have come out as the big winners of the Billboard Latin Music Awards 2020, each taking home 7 awards.
Daddy Yankee!
Daddy Yankee, often hailed as the king of reggaeton, has won 6 of the 7 awards, including the prize for Billboard Latin Song of the Decade for his 2017 dance anthem Despacito. In his acceptance speech, Yankee thanked fans and said he feels as fresh as he did when he started making music over 3 decades ago. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Let's take a look at some sports. And here's Ayotunde Balogun.
Many thanks, Ijoma. We start off with football and not too cherry news for the Niger Super Eagles. Well, they have dropped 3 spots in the latest FIFA World Rankings. The 3-time African champions are now 32nd in the world after being rated 29th just last month. They are 4th in Africa behind Senegal, Tunisia and Algeria. Well, the next FIFA World Ranking will be published on November the 26th. The prospect of Cristiano Ronaldo coming up against Lionel Messi in the UEFA Champions League next week is in doubt after the Juventus superstar tested positive again for COVID-19. The 35-year-old contracted the virus last week, just days after playing for Portugal against France and Spain, and has since been in self-isolation. It is believed that Juventus will ask UEFA for permission to test Ronaldo ahead of the game in a bid to make him available for the reunion with the Argentinian superstar Messi on Wednesday. And Novak Djokovic says his hunger to make history is the reason why he has decided not to defend his Paris Masters title. If Djokovic remains the world number 1 until March the 8th, he will surpass Roger Federer as the player to have spent most weeks at the top of the ATP World Rankings. And with that in mind, the 33-year-old has opted to play in Vienna, where he can earn additional ranking points. And tennis great Boris Becker has been accused of failing to hand over his trophies to settle his debts. The 52-year-old, who was declared bankrupt in June of 2017, is accused of not complying with obligations to disclose his information. The trophies listed on the new 28-count indictment include his maiden Wimbledon trophy, his 1989 silverware, also from Wimbledon, and his 1991 and 1996 Australian Open trophies. He has pleaded not guilty to all counts. And that's wrap on sports news. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. Back to you, John.
Thanks a lot, Ayotunde. And the main news again. President Muhammadu Buhari today asked protesting youths to end their demonstrations and embrace peace in his first broadcast to the nation since the crisis started. The president also decried the negative role the social media played in spreading the violence and called on the international community to always seek clarity before jumping to conclusions. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Do stay safe and good night.